36, with close to 500,000 others displaced from their homes.
Jets out to Dubai for the COP28 Climate Summit, where he will deliver a statement on the historic African Leaders Nairobi Declaration adopted at the inaugural Africa Climate Summit held in September.
Kenya commits to eradicate HIV and AIDS in children by 2027 as they commemorate the annual World AIDS Day with events across the country led by Cabinet Secretary for Health Susan Nakumicha in Meru County.
Finally, December is here. Happy new month. It is the 1st of December 2023. 24 days. 24 days to Christmas.
24 days.
It's a nice feeling, I tell you.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, finally. we kind of, in November, you're ish about saying it. But right now, you can actually say Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you.
From here, it is Shere Tupu,
yes.
all the way until the end of the year.
But
where's your sister, by the way?
Next month, we'll look for her. Maybe the cold. Baridi. Maybe the cold. Oh, yes.
Well, welcome to this edition of Morning Cafe. My name is Freddy Ndimuli. If you look at the weather, it knows it's even December. Only 5% chance of rain today, meaning there's no rain coming your way. Highs of 25 degrees Celsius, lows of 15 degrees. It promises to be a nice Friday. So welcome to the show. Let's do this.
Oh, yes. I'm used to Stanley Ringita. Most definitely, it's a Friday and wrapping up the week in style. We'll be having the whole DJ here. We'll be having an interesting guest right here with us. And, just to really start the whole week in style. Happy new month to you. And hopefully this particular month starts in earnest. And because we are in that particular season where you really want to travel, remember, we are still preaching that whole bit of safe travels out here. But first, let's get the big story pertaining matters floods.
All right, to the top story now. 16 more people have died in the last 2 days owing to the El Nino rains, bringing the death toll to 136. Interior Principal Secretary Raymond Omolo says the number of households displaced by the raging floods remains the same at slightly more than 94,000, while 462,000 persons have been displaced. PS Omolo noted that the government is continuing with its efforts to mitigate the effects of the floods. The PS says that a decrease in rainfall is anticipated in the northern half of the country this week, even as the government continues with its flood mitigation efforts in worst-hit counties and those on high alert. Now, about 10 tons of assorted food items were airlifted to Wajir County yesterday, while KDF airdropped food items at Chebaso in Isiolo County. Elsewhere, the government also says it has flown rescue boats from Mombasa to Garissa to assist in evacuation and relief efforts. Meanwhile, the National Disaster Operations Center can be reached on the toll-free number 800-721-571. The toll-free number is 800-721-571 to report any emergency incident. Let's now get what else is happening today in the day's diary.
Oh yes, and even as you'd mentioned, today is World AIDS Day, and a number of events lined up today. Susan, the Health Cabinet Secretary will be presiding over this, particularly the main event. Also here in Nairobi, Governor Johnson Sakaja will be presiding over the World AIDS Day commemoration in Ruben Hospital, well, among other stakeholders expected to be in that particular event, and we'll be following up on other highlights, even in the National Assembly as well as the Parliament. Today is also the second day of COP28, started yesterday and goes on until next week. And President William Ruto is expected to be there yesterday, even as he was presiding over and that particular inaugural commemoration of the Hustler Fund. After that particular event, jetting out of the country to Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. And speaking of, the president is forming the dailies this morning with the blue countersuit. Looks pretty good, by the way. You told me I need a good tailor.
Oh yes, this is not something you joke around with. If you get it wrong, you end up looking like a scarecrow. So yes, if you plan to wear a countersuit, you better. Because I've seen so many people attempting to imitate the president's look. Well, his is a presidential tailor. It must be.
Good thing I have the president's tailor. Good thing.
Good thing.
I have his number.
Try and let's see if at all you can manage the look. Anyway, let's take a look at the dailies this morning, and we start off with the Standard. Hits and misses of Ruto's pet project. That's a big headline on the Standard this Friday. Hustler Fund. William Ruto's message that raised the hope and aspirations of the hustlers saw him clinch the presidency. 1 year after the Hustler Fund was started, President is still hopeful it will solve their problems. This has been covered on pages 2 and 3 of this daily, the Standard this morning. A picture there of the president during the first anniversary celebrations of the Hustler Fund in Nairobi yesterday. And he said that he will reward borrowers with 50% of their savings. Interesting. Something to look forward to today. And he said by today he should be getting that money.
So it's just a notification.
Well, it's a new month. Sherehe kabambe. As my friend says, tunaserereka.
Oh, yes.
Other highlights on the front page of the Standard and National News. 2 women resolve to live positively, get children, fight stigma. Matters HIV/AIDS as the world marks World AIDS Day. 2 women did not let HIV get in their way of motherhood and happiness. And Matters World AIDS Day extensively covered on pages 6 and 7 of the Standard, even as we commemorate this day globally.
And it's interesting because, again, different dailies will be looking at this. We'll always be talking about this. The only daily that you'll see largely talking about HIV and AIDS.
Yes, in Kenya, we rarely see Matters HIV/AIDS on the front pages anymore, apart from today, World AIDS Day. But in Uganda and elsewhere, it is something that keeps recurring and keeps appearing on the front pages. Back to the front page of the Standard, another piece of news. More parents move to court over KCPE. And on the top strip, pay boon for teachers as they get extra packs. In business, big win for Sarai. They will run Mumias. And on international news, Kissinger, divisive in death as life. And that's the front page of the Standard today.
Man United all back but can't bite. Good thing you've missed that one.
Oh yeah. Just a moment on the back page. Manchester United all back.
Good thing it's a Friday, and you started Monday criticizing
we
us.
talked about it, and this were the UEFA Champions League results from Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And yes, we talked about, because it was a goal festival. It was 6 goals between Galatasaray and Man United, 3 goals apiece. For Arsenal, 6 goals against Lens. Elsewhere, Benfica 3-3 Inter Milan. Real Madrid 4-2 against Napoli, so it was 6-6-6. Only Sevilla versus PSV Eindhoven, they got 5. And Braga versus Union Berlin 1-1. But yeah, I think the best result here was definitely from Arsenal.
That's true.
That 6-goal rout against Lens.
It reaches a point.
And
it reminds me that
you cannot change the facts.
It reminds me the Tanzanian coach who says it reaches a point where even the goals, it's just a show off. There has to be a limit.
Yeah.
There has to be a limit where teams are told this is where you should be scoring. Past that is just,
here.
yeah. Even if you know you have a chance to, stop from that.
I understand your pain. I understand your pain.
Let's go over to Daily Nation. And for Daily Nation, they're veering off from the whole matters, the pet project and matters hustler fund. Now, they're talking about politics here. They say referendum, Ruto allies tell off Raila. So matters politics, ODM chief demanded the people's input on offices of opposition leader Prime CS. And in a nutshell, they say it's a dilemma whether or not to call a plebiscite to implement some of the proposals made by the National Dialogue Committee. In the report appears to be the next battleground for the president and Azimio leader Raila Odinga. So the outcome of such a vote in the president's first term could determine the winner of the 2027 contest. And both camps are aware of this. Pages 4 and 5 of the same. Just below that particular story on Hustler Fund, pictorials of what was happening yesterday at the Green Park terminus. Below it on the bottom scroll, a number of stories also reflecting on the Daily Nation and matters transport. Cabinet Secretary of Matters Roads and Transport, that is Kipchumba Murkomen, has directed NTSA to crack down on private vehicles that carry fare-paying passengers from today. And I'm pretty sure now from this should be one of the busiest months even for CS Murkomen, because we're expecting to see him, address even more, expected some of these road accidents that may happen. Yes, just putting and tightening measures. And
with El Nino rains, it means that the problem is double this time around.
Oh,
so yes, safety, road safety, we cannot overstate it.
In matters education, MP Simon Machogu demand neck changes over KCPE irregularities. That is the back page. We'll be getting into that in a few. Still at the very bottom scroll, Matters World AIDS Day. Giving PrEP to pregnant women curbs infection by HIV. That is according to a new study. More is on page 14. A new study published in a renowned journal. You can read on that. And on the right strip, another story also reflecting on the back page. Permanent jobs beckon for 46,000 intern tutors. So the 46,000 intern teachers who are recruited this year will have their contracts extended in January for one more year before they are made permanent and pensionable employees in 2025. TSC CEO Nancy Macharia told the Senate Committee on Education yesterday. That is on page, the back page of it. And finally, the Daily Nation has a whole extensive report on the COP28 and asking pertinent questions there. Can new innovations, environmental policies, and William Ruto's green diplomacy turn things around? That's a big question, even as he flies to Dubai. That's the Daily Nation.
Okay, let's take a look at the Star now. And on the Star this morning, why Ruto allies reject Raila calls for referendum. Experts say 5 key proposals require public vote. Azimio chief calls for vote. President disapproves use of taxpayer billions. That's a big talking point there on the front page of the Star today. The other highlights: Nobel Peace Prize laureate takes final bow. Elsewhere, senators raise red flag on shortage of TB medicine. And Hustler Fund, 39.5 billion shillings out in 1 year. That's a front page. On the top strip of the Star's front page, on the Siasa pullout, wrath of El Nino and struggle for survival in Kenya's north. Interesting read there. And the Siasa pullout's front page has Ruto in a tight corner. And that is the Star today.
Katika gazeti la Taifa Leo, kuna taarifa moja pale nimeona pale juu, gazeti la Taifa Leo akisema Arsenal FC juu mani wakisuasua.
Rudia tena. Arsenal FC juu, Manu wakisuasua. Vijana wa Teta walikanyaga Len mabao 6 kwa nunge, UEFA kunata kileleni kundi ba.
Kwingineko mtazamaji, tukiangazia masuala ambayo kama sisi wa Kenya yanatuhusu, mambo ya wazungu hayatuachie. Mabilioni kusafisha hewa Kenya. Hiyo ndio taarifa kuu katika gazeti la Taifa Leo. Wasema Saudia mwaga mabilioni ya pesa kufadhili mipango mikubwa ya kuondoa kaboni katika bara Afrika. Na tulikuwa tunaangazia taarifa hii pale jana. Huenda kampeni ya kupanda miti ya serikali ya Kenya ni sehemu ya biashara ya Saudi Arabia kupiga vita kuondolewa kwa kawi ya mafuta yanayochafua mazingira na kuchangia pakubwa mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Habari kamili katika ukurasa wa pili. Tuelekee pale chini, vidokezo vingine vilivyoangaziwa. Masuala ya usalama, wabunge wakosoa maafisa. Wabunge Turkana wataka serikali kuajiri polisi wa akiba kutatua zogo la mipaka. Kwingineko, koti ya kataa kufufua kesi ya Mumias. Pale ndani, muziki na BAMBA wa Kenya. Spotify yatoa orodha ya nyimbo ambazo Wakenya wamesikiliza sana mwaka huu. Mengine katika ukurasa wa 4. Fred, katika miaka yako sijui kama bado wafuatilia masuala haya, masuala ya Spotify na Spotify Wrapped.
Sijakuelewa lakini.
Usijali, tutakuwa hapa na Bansi Kimuya akitueleza mengi ya hayo. Kuna wale Spotify Wrapped wanajihisi kana kwamba wao ndio kusema na wanachapisha.
Bansi ni yule mrembo kigezo cha wikendi.
Bas.
Namuelewa yule.
Wewe elewa ile kuweka CD pale kisha cheza pale Santura.
Kuna
Santuri hiyo.
Kuna nyingine ilikuwa inaitwa Walkman. Unaweka tape pale ndani. Miaka ya kitambo. Tulipokuwa vijana wachanga. Let's move on to the People Daily. On the front page of the People Daily, a very interesting story. 9.3 billion shilling edible oil now goes missing. Senate team denied access to warehouses, with sources revealing that health officials had declared consignment under investigation unfit for human consumption. And this is a story that it looks like everyone else has missed. This is a very interesting one on the People Daily. It's on page 4. The other big story on the front page of the People Daily: why health insurance could deny you marriage certificate.
Oh, wow.
Wow. The connection there, still struggling to see, but why health insurance could deny you marriage certificate. Still on the top strip of the People Daily, the very top line: gangs emerge to control matatu industry. The special report on page 8. And on the bottom strip, deaf man, my brave fight with HIV and tuberculosis, as one of those stories as we commemorate World AIDS Day. That's the front page of the People Daily today.
From PD to BD, that is Business Daily. Let's talk money matters now, and how Gulf baited Kenya. How Gulf Farm baited Kenya into extending G2G deal, and more on that is ADNOC digs in for one more year to review premiums, and demands by UAE Farm revealed in a COP28 report. That is on Matters Energy. And just below that, Matters Housing. Informal workers to access state-backed mortgages under a new plan. And more is on page 2, but for your benefit, viewer, households in the informal sector could soon access home loans from banks and SACCOs under a plan aimed at de-risking lending to workers with irregular income. So Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, that is KMRC, a joint venture of the Treasury and private lenders, is working on a framework to guarantee part of the loans. Other highlights making it to Business Daily, 2 of them on that ticker there. On the right side, private firms to run 5 power transmission lines. Will be running at least 5 electricity transmission lines will soon be run by private investors, as in government advances with its plan to operate part of the grid system at a public-private partnership PPP framework. And finally, subsidiaries lift bank forex income to 57 billion Kenyan shillings. And that's the front page of the Business Daily. On the Life Pullout magazine, matters music here. Music enthusiast strikes a chord in tax practice.
Okay.
Mixing music and money.
Let's now take a look at what's headlining in the neighboring country of Uganda. And we take a look at the Daily Monitor. The big headline matters World AIDS Day. 70 teens catch HIV every day, according to report. Analysis of Uganda AIDS Commission statistics shows that more than 50,000 new HIV infections in the last 2 years have been among young people aged 15 to 24, triggering a crisis for the country's future. The story is also page 4 and 5. And when it comes to HIV and AIDS, I think Uganda was one of the most affected countries in the world, and hence World AIDS Day is a big day for them, and big headline, 70 teens catching HIV every single day. A photo there of the Ugandan cricket team, ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2024. Cricket cranes write history as they qualify for World Cup. And those are the big stories in Uganda this morning.
In Tanzania, meanwhile, Kiti cha Moto is the big headline on the front page of Mwananchi. So why is it Kiti cha Moto? Wengi hukumbukwa na misukosuko. Chongolo wa kwanza kuandika barua kuachia ngazi. Mseko asema kujiuzulu lazima iwepo misingi miwili. Katika gazeti la Mwananchi, pale juu, mawakili waibua utata sampuli za mate ya mama wa marehemu. Ni kesi ambayo imekuwa ikiendelea katika nchi hiyo. Tanzania umekuwa kifuatilia kwa kina. Pale chini, biharusi aliyekufa ajalini, mama yake kuzikwa siku ya harusi. Taarifa ya kutatanisha pale, wamechapisha gari hilo na jinsi ambavyo ilimizwa. Rehema Chamba alikuwa akitarajia kufunga ndoa kesho, lakini ajali katisha uhai wake akiwa na mama yake mzazi. Kurasa wa 5 pale. Vidokezo vingine katika gazeti la Mwananchi, jalada la Gekula tua kwa DPP, Chadema wamng'ang'ania. Pale chini, masuala ya elimu, utafiti katika sekta ya elimu, serikali kuvalia njuga mdondoko wanafunzi kutomaliza la 7 au darasa la 7 au gredi ya 7. Pale juu mwishowe, kidokezo cha mwisho, mlinzi aliyeuawa ziko, polisi bado washikiliwa. Na hilo ndilo gazeti la Mwananchi.
A similar headline on the Citizen, still in Tanzania, matters to do with the Chama Cha Mapinduzi hot seat. That's the Secretary General seat. Speculation as Chongolo resigns from CCM hot seat and the surprise resignation of CCM Secretary General. This is the ruling party in Tanzania. Daniel Chongolo, after holding the position for 2 years, has set tongues wagging, with some political commentators linking his exit to the 2025 general election. And yeah, the seat is there with Daniel Chongolo walking away from it. Elsewhere, AU moves to recover assets stolen from Africa, and why trade in chemicals has surged since 2020. These are the big stories on the front page of the Citizen. Big news in Tanzania today.
Oh yes. And
let's come back home and take a look at maswala ya karakacha.
And well, if you're doing that with us, page 16 of the Standard, and page 18 of the Daily Nation, page 10 of People Daily, I believe on Business Daily.
Page 11 of the Business Daily.
Yes.
So we start off with the Standard.
Started off with the Standard. Matters what's happening today, the World AIDS Day.
World AIDS Day. And yes, the Grim Reaper there, HIV AIDS, saying, when did I drop the ball? Because Global Health News says the leading causes of death: number 1, heart diseases; number 2, cancer; number 3, accidents; number 4, stroke; 5, chronic respiratory diseases; and number 5, Alzheimer and other dementias. And HIV and AIDS does not feature among the top 6 causes, leading causes of death. And the Grim Reaper is wondering, when did I drop the ball? This is good news for East Africa, which was really affected, especially in the 90s, by the HIV and AIDS epidemic.
So the fact that it's no longer
It's no longer a big deal. It's no longer a big deal, yes. Right now we're talking about matters of reduction of new infections. It's no longer the killer.
Yeah.
I remember back in the 90s, it was such a big deal. It was such a big deal. It wiped out entire villages in Uganda especially, and parts of Western Kenya. And we wouldn't want to go back there.
Right, and on page 18 of the Daily Nation, matters politics and matters Kenyan politics. This one is interesting here. Well, a number of people there. There's a gentleman lying down representing that outfit that Azimio leader Raila Odinga wears. And this gentleman is seemingly crying, saying, "I protest," but accept anyway. He was probably going to make a speech, or maybe after making a speech, because there's that microphone there. And adjacent to that, there's another gentleman there in another room holding a seat. He was probably just making it, that particular seat. And that seat is written Office of Official Opposition. And well, the other people there around this crying gentleman are wondering what's happening.
It is the double speak. On one hand, you appear not to be supporting this proposal, but on the other, you look like you've accepted it.
Right, and on People Daily, on page 10, this is actually a very interesting cartoon. Oh yes, well, a number of people there crossing and just walking, I think, inside the floods, and there are also cows there. The people sitting on the roofs. One of them says, "We risk going to jail." C.S. Murkomen has said that walking, living, or driving in floods will be considered attempted suicide. And there's another gentleman that says, "Go tell him to arrest El Nino." Yes.
Because you tell people that if they walk in flood water, they'll be arrested. But there's flood water everywhere. So what do? Get rid of the El Nino then. Well, those are the cartoons on our dailies this morning. Yes, and as we mark World AIDS Day, just looking at some of the headlines that we have on the Daily Nation, page 14, a study giving prep to pregnant women curbs HIV infections. Number of people living with HIV has declined. Pregnant women are more likely to catch the virus and infect their unborn children. And the number of pregnant women who took part in the study on pre-exposure prophylaxis numbering about 9,376. As we said, the discussion has moved to reducing the number of new infections. As you saw that headline in Uganda, 70 new infections every single day. And people between the ages of 15 and 24. In Kenya, the numbers are much lower at around 30 new infections daily, especially among people between the ages of 15 and 24.
And I'm pretty sure even in Uganda, the same conversation that we have in Kenya, the big fear, even for the teens, is not even HIV, but then just getting pregnant.
Pregnancy, yes.
Speak about matters numbers here. Still on page 14, there's an interesting numbers here. According to NSDCC, the findings further show that the number of people living with the virus reduced by 59,483 from 1,437,267 last year to 1,377,784 this year. So hopefully this today, we'll be getting even more numbers, finer numbers, and what these particular numbers actually entail and really mean.
Yes, because we're talking more about the numbers and the declining new infections. So today we expect a lot more statistics, and anyone who will be standing on a podium to speak, it's about the numbers, how many new infections in comparison to previous years. So yes, World AIDS Day being marked globally.
Oh, yes.
After the break, we'll be delving into matters state of the nation. Today being Friday, we'll be hosting a panel of youth on the youth perspective. Nelly Chepkemoi, Jerry Kahiga, Kennedy Sankara, and Ken Babu. Do stand by for that conversation. Meanwhile, you can be part of it as well using our social media channels on X at TV47 News and on Facebook TV47 Kenya. My Twitter handle is at Fred Indimuli, at Nyaringita_, and you can also tag Flora Limuki at Limuki_FL. You're watching Morning Cafe. Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indumuli. Time to take a look at the state of the nation. And today being Friday, it is a youth perspective. We are honored to have in studio Nelly Chepkemoi, politician, national youth leader. It's a pleasure having you this morning. Karibu sana.
To be back, asante.
Next to Nelly, we have Kennedy Sankara, a youth policy analyst, advocate, Operation Linda Jamii. Pleasure. Karibu sana TV 47.
I'm much obliged.
Asante sana. And familiar face on this panel, Jerika Higa, national youth leader in Nyandarua County.
Thank you so much.
Karibuni sana. Now, today is World AIDS Day, and I want us to start from there because when you look at statistics, the discussion over the years has changed to matters to do with reduction of new infections. And according to some of the reports, latest reports, especially on this issue, it is said that about 30 Kenyans get infected on a daily basis with HIV, and mostly these 30 are between the ages of 15 and 24, meaning that it is the Kenyan youth who are mostly affected by this. The cartoon on the Standard, I think it's on the Standard, shows about the reduction in the number of deaths caused by HIV. And the Grim Reaper is wondering where he dropped the ball because HIV and AIDS is no longer number one killer. It's not even among the top 6 issues like cancer and heart ailments. Number 1, heart diseases. Number 2, cancer. Number 3, accidents. Number 4, stroke. Number 5, chronic respiratory diseases. And number 6, Alzheimer and other dementias. So HIV is no longer number 1 killer, but Kenyan youth are leading in as far as new infections are concerned. And probably let's start from there. Where do you think the disconnect is? Because those who grew up in the 90s and probably came face to face with the face of HIV were very scared about getting infected. Well, of course, statistics show that many of these youth also are born with HIV. So they've had to live their entire lives with HIV, but they're now infecting their peers. And let's start with you, Nelly. Where is the disconnect? Is it that the communication in as far as HIV, the interventions that are available, and the kind of medication and therapy that's available is not getting to the youth?
Yeah, I think for a big percentage, I would say that there's been a disconnect because as much as we are even like we are trying to celebrate the World AIDS Day, it's something that we cannot really keep quiet about. And I think it's very worrying that we are having now teenagers who are now like the ones who are getting the most, and worst of it all is like the youth in general. So I think the disconnect comes in with so much has been put, or rather the focus has been so much on other things that we are forgetting the milestones we've taken in the fight against HIV. So I think we need to relook at the policies and strategies that we are using when it comes to the prevention, when it comes to the care, as well as the treatment and even the after treatment, because I want to think they are all intertwined together. So there's probably a disconnect when it comes to also engaging the youth and these teenage children who are in school in the ways that they can prevent from themselves. I think there also needs to be a point where these people are engaged. If we had an education system that really has some of these things, then it will come from a point of an empowered student in school who is able to know about this. They're empowered to be able to know how to prevent themselves from this epidemic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sankara, it is said that young people, adolescents especially, and the youth are more scared or are more concerned about getting pregnant than getting infected with STIs or HIV. Why do you think this is?
Well, you see the exponential spread of HIV and AIDS which has also been contributed to by the drug and substance abuse. These young men and women no longer feel the pinch of being in an hospital bed or taking the antiretroviral drugs. All they see is to escape the matrix of being a pregnant mother. 9 months, because I think to some, they would say, you know, I'm a young person, I would not lie to you, I'm an angel. I may visit these entertainment joints at times, and you hear them speak, and they tell you that, you know, pregnancy is visible. 9 months, it is a walking evidence, but no one will tell you are HIV positive, not unless the signs and symptoms are much visible, or you are in a position, I mean, you're in that the syndrome stage where the signs are much visible, and you know, you can have HIV and AIDS and still look more healthier than Sankara. So the issue here is the perception and the information that has been exposed to these young people out here. I think that is what may contribute to that perception. People no longer fear HIV. People fear pregnancy than HIV. And the drugs and substance abuse. So, and you know, this is something that has been here for a very long time. And with the new killer diseases like cancer and etc., a lot of efforts are now shifting towards these diseases and leaving the HIV here. But again, we should ask ourselves, who are the major victims? These are young men and women. There are a lot of factors that specifically places the girl child at the forefront victim of HIV and AIDS. A young girl who is experiencing the adolescent stage, the neglects from parents, they cannot provide the dignity packages. You find a young man somewhere, moneyed, inconsiderate, will take advantage of this young girl, manipulator. In this process, HIV still spreads and other sexually transmitted diseases. Yes.
And Jerry, because there have been so many interventions, and in the years back, issues to do with protection. Those messages were very visible on media, on TV, newspapers, radio. Everyone was insisting that if at all you are to engage in some of these things, you have to be protected. Those messages are still there. But it would appear that the younger generation, the same age you're talking about, 15 to 24, are not getting this message or are not accepting of this message. They're more scared about getting pregnant. They abuse contraceptives more instead of using protection that would save them from STIs and HIV. Why is this?
I think by the fact that these young people between ages 15 to 24 have come into the knowledge of sexual interactions when HIV and AIDS is a normal disease. Back then, maybe those who were the live alone generation Z, the other ones, would maybe tell us, back then in the years, somebody with HIV in the village was even known by everybody and was very much stigmatized. So in the process of this world and the Africanism trying to erase stigmatization, we normalized HIV. And we normalized it to an abnormal rate because we were supposed to normalize it and ensure that somebody with HIV can stay in the society without being stigmatized. But now it has gotten to a point that this generation of young people know you can have HIV survive for 30, 40 years. They have seen people die sooner because of maybe a child, when you're giving birth, they have seen people die at that instance of giving birth. And for them right now, if you ask them, they just want to live the life. They just want to live the life. The message of protection, the message of safe sex is all over the internet. But they choose now not to focus on that. Back then in the years, the message was not there. So you people had to bring it very strongly so that the youth that were there by then absorbed it and were very scared about HIV and AIDS. Right now today, people know they can go take ARVs, they are even free. If they are not even available, this nation can come to a standstill because people are going to strike and all that. Secondly, I don't think nowadays protection is readily available as it was maybe some years back. We are getting to a point where I think even in the near future, if we don't put maybe these regimes into check, we are going to go back to a situation where there are no free condoms. Then again, the fact that we've curtailed the freedom of expression of university student leaders, we have reduced the universities to delegate society. It's no longer, we no longer see these kind of initiatives being brought out openly the way they were being brought out there previously. So I think this generation is just not afraid about HIV anymore.
Yes. And Nelly, we've been joking around with my colleagues the fact that because we look at newspapers from the region and matters to do with HIV, especially in Uganda, you'll always find a story about HIV on the front page. But when it comes to Kenya, it's only today that we've seen, on World AIDS Day, that we've seen HIV on the front page. Yes. Meaning that even the media stayed away from discussing these matters. How else can these people get this information if at all the media stop talking about HIV? And then there's social media as well. But the conversation, I'm not even seeing. The top trend today is Happy New Month. It is World AIDS Day. Yeah. No one is talking about it.
I mean, it that just raises questions about us. Like, how serious are we with dealing with this issue if we are really serious about it? Like, today is World AIDS Day, and you're speaking of, like, we are having something else trending. Media outlets that are not really speaking about this. Instead, while they should be the ones who are helping us, like, to pass this message to the other citizens out here. But I think it needs to have a collective effort, not just from the media, not just from the government, but a collective effort of all of us, the media, the government, the leaders, the youth themselves, our family institutions in a way also contribute, because I want to take it from a point of the conversations. When we start having these conversations, like on a daily, not really on a daily, but more often, we don't need to wait to have the World AIDS Day to start advocating and passing the message about AIDS. Let us keep talking about it, not just once, but more often about it. Let us involve these youths in this. You know, you've talked of how there's messaging, but I'm looking at it as how are we conveying this message to these youths? How are we conveying the issue of protection to our youth? When we are talking of a government that comes up with a health system, the UHC, how has HIV been able to be handled when it comes to UHC? Because UHC was brought to us as the citizens as something that would help us, or rather something that would help us maintain our health, but we really don't see the much effort or interventions that are being put in UHC with other diseases, the same effort being put on HIV AIDS.
Sankara, how do we reintroduce this discussion, especially among the youth? Because this age group talks a lot. We live in the information age. They're on social media, TikTok, creating content, X, Instagram, Facebook. They're all over, and they're talking about everything else. But you look at the top trends on Twitter today, and nowhere does World AIDS Day feature. That means no one is having this discussion. How do we introduce this? Because platforms for having these conversations right now are more than just traditional media.
Well, we really need to reanalyze the impact of HIV and AIDS in Kenya since it was first identified. And also we need to consider, you know, a lot of things have contributed to this I don't care attitude amongst the young people. Your age, Fred, when you are brought up, and our current generation, there is a lot of mismatch. We're in a digital era where parents consider no one-on-one discussion with their children. Back then, my auntie would tell me that the grandmother would sit them down and lecture them properly on how disadvantageous it may be to them in engaging in marital sex and such related activities. The children of then and the children of today, the concept of, how do we call it, putting or taking serious things seriously has changed because the battle has shifted to other things. We are in a society where people are battling with putting a cup of water on the table. I didn't say tea, I said a cup of water. We're in a society where accessing basic needs is a tall ladder. So is a parent going to take his time teaching the child how to take care of themselves, or they are going to look for food? And it is in this scenario that these young men and women have been exposed. There are people who have money out here, and they are really able to get their way by use of money. They will force you to do anything they want for their pleasure in return. So for us to reintroduce this conversation, we must first emphasize, do a complete analysis on how far we've got with this HIV.
And you said something very interesting about economic empowerment, because yes, it has been pointed out by experts that it is one of the causing factors. The fact that so many people, the older generation is taking advantage of these younger people for soliciting sexual favors in exchange for money. It would appear that the younger generation has really prioritized issues to do with money. And they can do anything, they're ready to do anything, even at the expense of their own health. That is a trend that was never there before, Jerry.
Yeah, it's there because I think back in the days when university students used to be brought to university, parents were very cautious of, is my son in school, is my daughter in school, first year, how are they surviving, sending them upkeep. And it was, parents took responsibility about their children back in campus. But today we are looking at a situation where a comrade can tell you the last time a parent sent them money was when they were leaving home for start of the semester. Assuming the semester starts in January, that means the last time that parent sent money was in January. And then still at April, this comrade is supposed to be eating. This comrade is supposed to be commuting to school. This comrade is supposed to be engaging in those social activities within the school. So, and because when they call home, the story is the same. We don't have money, we're also struggling. So I also feel the economic constraints that we are having in this nation have really contributed to the young people doing anything for money. Because you can imagine when I make a phone call home and my mom is there crying and telling me, Njeri, you are asking for money for a game that you're supposed to go to your next campus or a neighboring campus. Here at home, we don't even have unga. We cannot even afford unga. Your father has been out of work for the last 2-3 weeks. As a comrade, what am I going to do? I'm going to be in campus doing anything that I can to get money. And the moment somebody is desperate, you will do anything for that amount of money. Wow. And that leads us to a question of, if we cannot maintain our students, we cannot maintain this younger generation at their parents' responsibility, why do we then still want to blame them for doing anything for money?
Interesting, and we may continue with this conversation after the break. We are due for a break. I had totally forgotten about that. It is 7 a.m. Let's take that break. When we come back, we'll be looking at this, plus a lot more other discussions, including the privatization of state assets that has caused quite some uproar. We'd want to see what the youth feel about that initiative by the government. You're watching Morning Cafe. Don't go too far. in studio on Morning Cafe with Nelly Chepkemoi, Jerika Higa, and Kennedy Sankara. My panelists this morning, the youth perspective on the state of the nation, and we're just looking at the situation of the youth, with statistics showing that about 30 young Kenyans get infected with HIV. These are new infections on a daily basis, and these are people between the ages of 15 and 24. And we're trying to see where the disconnect is, because so many interventions have happened within the years over the last few decades in trying to ensure that the rate of new infections is on a decline, but now we are seeing, it appears that it is on the rise again. But you're talking about the issue of social media and even Kenyan youth who are now engaging in some interesting activities that could predispose them to HIV infection. And you're suggesting that it could be out of necessity, Sankara, especially with young Kenyans who are in the university, because they fall under that age between 18 and 24. That lack of economic empowerment and the kind of burden that this country has placed on the younger generation in trying to, as they try to sustain themselves through university education, that probably that could also be contributing to this.
Fred, the moral decay we're having as a country is as a result of government negligence, inability of the government to protect its citizens. In a society where the government fails the importance of young people. You know, Kenya is a youthful country because 75% of this population is comprised of the youth, and between 18 to 25 or 30 comprises about 38% of the entire population or of the segment. So that critically tells you that the emphasis of the government should be pro-young people, because these are the people in whose activities gives the country the direction. When the youths decide to go left, the country definitely goes left, because they tell us all over that the future belongs to young people. Which future do we have in a state where a young person cannot feed himself or herself? And this thing has even regenerated to our parents. The parents, in as much as the duty and responsibility of a parent to provide, but you can only give what you have. That is the truth we must tell each other. The parent himself or herself is struggling to raise the family that they were blessed with. In the same time, there are social needs that we must attain as a human being. You want to provide food, you want to ensure you have a better healthcare service, you want to ensure that security is provided for the family, and etc., etc. So my point on this moral decay is government negligence. And we had a government that is considerate enough to protect its young people. Even regulation of these social media platforms that have been used to escalate the moral decay would have been a policy in progress, a policy formulated and enforced. But you see, just in the recent past TikTok, people used to express their nudity very early in the morning until I was having this conversation with the Ezekiel Mutua, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, and then he was telling me that, you know, in as much as you want to use this platform, we have to regulate it. We can't ban it because there are people making money out of it. And again, the government is also advising us that we need to go techno. We need to be techno-savvy. We move towards the digital era. The digital era, you can create content, post it there, and viewership, and blah, blah, you get money. So all we need is to have a policy that is pro-young people. You know, in 1960s, the government or the policy formulators never took into consideration the youth involvement in development initiatives until 1964, when the National Youth Service was created. And the government has been supporting it till to date. But again, that has not been enough, because the youth is just a unique segment of the population. We have a lot of unique qualities, unique capabilities that we need to express to the maximum. That can only happen in an environment where, if I intend to do something, I don't get discouraged, I get supported. A young person today who wants to do business, the government will tell you, politicians, that, you know, be self-reliant, start a business. Do you know what it takes to start a business? Let's say you want to hawk water, just clean water. The taxes, the policies we have is what is killing us.
It would appear now they've found an easy way out, Nelly, especially when it comes to this Mubaba phenomenon. And paint for us a picture of a young girl going through campus and how the burden of sustaining herself could lead her towards HIV infection, because probably people are not even able to connect how you end up having getting
Babas.
And it is a mama phenomenon.
Nowadays, we're even talking about mamas. So I think it's also coming from the point of where, as a nation, we've failed our youth. And I'm saying that because when you try and look at it this way, you have mandated the government of the day in office to create that enabling environment for you as a youth to be able to thrive. That if I'm in campus, I'm expected to go through a certain type of system. Then when I'm done, or even through the system itself, there's a certain way I maintain my life, but I'm not able to because of the economic crisis that we have in the country. So you end up being pushed to indulging yourself in such activities where you now have this old person offering you an opportunity. And so because you're desperate enough to look for this money, you end up sleeping with this person, you end up sleeping with them without knowing their statuses, and you end up maybe getting this HIV. But I'm looking at it at one, I support what my fellow colleague Sankara has said, that as a government we've failed, but I'm also thinking of we cannot just sit down and wait for this government. If it's not doing something, then let us do something as the youth. If we keep being told that we are the people to change this nation, then I think we should start now. And I'm looking at it at a multi-sectoral approach. How do we get involved in such things? We do not need to wait for the government. Can the government find us already doing something? So I'm looking at it as just a multi-sectoral approach whereby, and I still point to the government, because at the end of the day, they are the people mandated in office to ensure that we are well taken care of as citizens or as a country. And just the other day, there was the launch of the CHPs, the community health promoters. And there's another thing in this country we are facing, that's the teenage pregnancies. And when you try to link these teenage pregnancies with what we are discussing today about HIV, they're somehow connected. We have teenagers who are becoming mothers at a younger age, and they end up getting HIV through the transmission that comes during birth. So I'm looking at it as getting to a point whereby we can involve these teenage mothers as well as the community health promoters. And how is this? We have these CHPs people, the community health promoters, just kind of try and map out if we have a region or a place where, for example, this region that we are, we have an issue where we have reported cases of teenage pregnancies. Can these community health promoters help us in trying to map out these young girls? Can they also help us in mapping out the boys as well? Because we are talking about the youth. We are not just dealing with the girls alone and teenage pregnancies. So once these people are able to map out these certain dynamics of the group of youths, then we can start from that point. We can start from how many do we have that are pregnant, how many youths do we have that are not informed. So if once we have this type of data, then we start looking at how then can we engage them? How do we bring in now the government to kind of engage with us through the Ministry of Education with school health programs? We can have community engagements, the community dialogues that I keep talking about when it comes to our policies, when it comes to our governance and leadership. Okay. Let us also have them when it comes to our health.
Jerry, anything to add in as far as looking for a solution for these young people on this matter?
The solution is going to start by parents taking back their responsibility. Once you bring your child to campus, that does not mean they are grown-ups. They are still children with no source of income. And I don't know who told parents the moment your son is in campus, they are old enough to do hassles. There is nothing called hassles in campus. Those hassles that they tell you about is what you see somebody drop out of school to kill the matrix. Is that what they escape the matrix?
To escape the matrix.
Or escape the matrix. And escaping the matrix, they are going into conning people in the name of, I don't know, Binance, Forex trading, and then you find the ladies are going to the Mubabas and the Mumamas. So if parents came and decided, we have come back to our responsibility, full responsibility. Don't just pay school fees. Pay school fees, pay for accommodation, and follow up and know, has my son eaten or not eaten? Because it's very sad that girls and young men in campus are sleeping around for just a meal. Not even money to buy a shoe, a meal. Secondly, I think the government, we've seen recently when they've said that they are going to withdraw the 50% funding that they used to give to universities and secondary schools, and literally we are looking at a nation where we no longer have free education. And I feel very sad because at this point, when we still have government funding, I can tell you there is still a whole quarter somewhere of students who don't manage to sit for their exams on time. Many are the students who have to defer and maybe do special exams because the parent cannot even afford these small amount of money that the government has left them to raise on their own. Now you can imagine the government has done away with the 50% financing that they used to do for comrades or for high school students. So what is going to happen? We are going, if today the rate of dropouts in university, we are looking at a rate of 3 out of 10 in every year, we are going to be looking at a rate of 5 out of 10 students will be dropping out because economic situation in this nation is bad. We need to call things as they are. The economic situation is bad. Parents can no longer, currently they can't even afford to maintain comrades in universities. Now you have removed the funding that you used to give us. Now it's double how the situation was. Thirdly, we are looking at a situation where we've normalized, I was telling you over the break that today if you go to TikTok, you will find people who boldly talk about, you know what, I'm HIV positive and I don't even look like I'm HIV positive. I think it's okay, but the extent that we have allowed these normalities have made our young people think it's a swag. You know, you can be HIV and still be doing TikTok and you have 1 million followers because the people who come on social media to speak about how they go on with their lives, I even see some of them come live, take their medication live as their followers watch, and it becomes now it's a new content creation.
Their status becomes a content.
We are talking about HIV as content creation, and somebody will tell me we are lowering the stigmatization levels, but I'm looking at it like somebody else somewhere is looking at the numbers of the lady with HIV positive. She has a following of 500,000. Me without, I have a following of 200 people. So just in case I get it anyway, I'm still going to be making money out of the content creation. And it's hard to draw the line. And some even lie. Yes, it's hard. Some are even lying that they are HIV positive.
They take
just for
fake
the content
drugs.
Creation. Yes. And it's very hard to draw the line between giving information or reducing stigmatization and making it a swag content creation kind of thing in the society.
World AIDS Day and the kind of conversations we're having in studio is just how HIV is affecting Kenyan youth, with statistics showing that about 30 Kenyan youth between the ages of 15 and 24 get infected with HIV on a daily basis. The numbers are higher in Uganda. It is a main headline on the Daily Monitor today. They're talking about 70 youth in Uganda. That's the front page. Yes, 70 teens catching HIV every day. This is according to a report. Same thing, ages between 15 and 24. That's in Uganda. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to move away from matters World AIDS Day and look at the privatization of state assets that has created and generated quite some debate. This past week, the government came out and listed 11 state corporations that are being earmarked for privatization. This is just part of the 35 state corporations that are going to be privatized. Now, the biggest conversation has been around the KICC, and I would want to get your sentiment because, yes, it is an iconic landmark in this city. It is a gazetted monument. And so how do you feel when you hear? I'll start with you, Sankara. What is your feeling or your sentiment about the privatization, especially of the KICC?
I'm a disappointed patriot. And I would say this without even blinking my eyes, that when President William Ruto first came to Nairobi, I'm pretty sure he never knew his actual location. He might have used KICC to locate the University of Nairobi from where he was. Now this is a building that was erected way back before or when his father maybe had been born or he was born then. Now the president has the audacity through his economic advisors to publicly declare privatization of KICC. He may privatize any other thing, but he should not touch KICC. That is a landmark building. A lot of things have happened under the roof called KICC. For the preservation of history, because we must appreciate our past for us to know actually where we are going. Why would you think of even privatizing KICC? We are confusing political battles and economic resuscitation strategies. Resuscitating an economy, there are instances where privatization can work, but under what circumstances? Have they given a valid justification for privatization of such state parastatals? The justifications, to me, they are neither here nor there. So the entire idea is null and void. Privatization alone, when we privatize, we seek to enhance economic efficiency. And maybe when we talk of privatization, somebody doesn't know. This is a transfer of business, industry, or a service from public ownership to a private ownership. We do so to enhance economic efficiency by increasing or by structural advancement of that particular institution, and also to enhance efficiency through productivity. We need data-backed conversations that in the recent past, KICC has been making a trend loss of net worth, blah, blah, blah. In this regard, we would, in our economic structure, we think we are losing a lot. If we divert this parastatal to this organization, we are likely to make a net of this amount of money. You see, economic conversations can never be pegged on hearsay and rumors. There is no miracle in that conversation. It is data versus information, and it is fact-based. You can't lie, and that's why the government is finding it rough to lie to the people of Kenya, because economy doesn't need the lies. Economy has got economic concepts.
Yet
so generally,
in and of itself is not necessarily a negative thing. And I'd like to introduce Ken Babu, the panelist, youth inclusion advocate. Karibu sana to this panel.
Thank you
and you
so
found us discussing this issue of disposal or privatization of state corporations. And I just want to get the sentiment across the table on your feeling about this. You start, whichever direction you take.
Thank you so much. First, apologies to the fellow panelists for at least arriving late. I think when next you guys are moving from this place, you should make it public that you've moved. Because I found myself on the other side. And I was like...
We've been here for more than a year.
you never saw KICC.
No, I've been out of this town.
Okay.
So I'm sorry for that also. On issue of privatization, I think it's just a man-eat situation. Because once those things will be sold, those parastatals, if you check keenly, you'll come to realize that the people who are pushing for their sales will be the buyers. Yes. So it's not something that is coming with a shocker. We know that there are certain individuals who are looking forward to milk this country and ensure that they are billionaires at the time this regime ends their term. So it's something that is so sad. As a young person who is who has a lot of time in future, I'm saddened, but we have to do something. we have to do something. If we can't take action, then we're going to make noise. We're going to make more noise.
Really, we've had instances where privatization has had a positive impact on some businesses. Safaricom, for example, it started off as a branch of Telecom Kenya back in the day. Eventually, it spread out. Eventually, there was even privatization, including that public IPO back in 2008. And today, Safaricom stands as perhaps the biggest telecommunications company, not just in Kenya, but the region. So definitely, privatization in some instances does work. Yeah. And it's not just in Kenya. So what would be the concern from your end?
So before I raise my concern, I think I would want to agree with you that privatization indeed is good. But we look at it, what are we trying to privatize, and for what purpose? But when you look at this state corporation cell, it's not really about the issue of privatization really, because I think I would like to just let Kenyans know that this is coming from an endorsement by the IMF. This is coming as a condition that is given to Kenya for the money that we are getting from them. And so when you look at X out there on Twitter, the economic advisor to the president himself is very big and very loud on how IMF is running the show in the country. And he even says that some of these things are coming as conditions set by the IMF. So let's start from that point. At what point do we as a country need to tell ourselves, or rather ask ourselves questions that, does it mean that IMF gets what it wants anytime at the expense of Kenyans? I'm looking at it as an issue as, why are we allowing IMF to rule us? Number two, the former minister, Wario, he gazetted for example, KICC, and as a concerned Kenyan youth, I'm really concerned at how this government is trying to even sell it. Does it mean now the regime, or rather the president, will have to degazette this? Does it mean that the citizens generally, or as youths, do we have to be concerned about other gazetted monuments or other treasured monuments of the country? So my only concern is we do not really, the idea of privatization is good for economic development. But what we are seeing right now is a condition set for us by the IMF. That doesn't need to happen, because this is, it's painful for Kenyans, and it's more painful for the youth and the public to be experiencing this. You get to watch this happen, but it doesn't really reflect to the lives a Kenyan is living. It's painful for a Kenyan to watch some of these things happen, and there's a government that is displaying opulence out here. We are crying that we are trying to privatize these agencies, the state corporations, in order to economically empower ourselves, but we are also watching a display of opulence by the state officials. So it doesn't really make sense. We oppose that, and that is why our party leader himself is very big and pronounced his stand, that His Excellency Raila Odinga pronounced his stand on this issue and said that if we really need to do the privatization and selling of this state corporation, then let us take to the people and see what the people want through a referendum.
Yes, the Treasury invited Kenyans to take part in giving their views, sort of public participation on this issue. But do you feel let down, Jerry, by Parliament, for example? Because yes, they passed the privatization bill that ensured that these decisions or this process will happen without their involvement, that it is now law. It just takes the executive through Treasury, and Parliament will only just receive a report to ratify at the very end of the process. Do you feel let down by the 13th Parliament in this matter?
First of all, me as Njeri Kahiga, I no longer remember we have a Parliament or a Senate in this nation. I think we just have an extension of the executive. Because you cannot tell me we have a parliament. Let's not even start about privatization. If fundamental things like finance bill that was coming to overburden Wanjiku went through that parliament, hii ya kuuza KICC You cannot tell me it's going to get stuck anywhere.
We have dealers.
You
not
can imagine.
leaders.
The people in the 13th parliament, as they go home 2027, because I can bet you 90% of that audience is going to go home. They need to go home and each should get a trophy of how bad they have taken this nation. They have driven this nation to a situation that we cannot even explain. This parliament has become like how you operate your TV channel, KTN, Citizen, TV47. The president, the executive just presses the button, and the members switch and switch, and nobody cares about Wanjiku. Treasury is just being another institution that is full of hypocrisy. The last time they asked for the Public Opinion Matters Finance Bill, what did they do about it? Nothing. Recently, they asked about our opinion on our IDs being charged 2,000 and those taxes that came around, what did they do about them? They also asked for opinions every now and then, but they just ask for opinions for it to be said they asked for opinions, but in real sense, they have already decided. Secondly, I'm worried about a Treasury inviting us to give our opinions on privatization of KICC, and the person who is going to finalize this issue, who is the president of this nation, I told you last time, that guy visits to rule. You have even seen Kenyans on Twitter, right? They make memes and say that he tells his pilot, usizime ndege, na shuka ni eke taxi moja mbili, then we go back to wherever we've come from. The moment the nation gets to that point, as Kenyans, we are sure this guy is never here. So at what time did he sit with the researchers? At what time did he sit with stakeholders of this nation? And they told him, our taxes or our revenue, we have tried all other avenues, and we have made resolutions that the only way we can work out our loans, work out our infrastructure is by KICC and other corporations being privatized. So I think we are dealing with an executive and a regime that wakes up and asks each other, mnaona tufanye aje? And one guy says, ama tuuze KICC. And it goes like that.
Babu, because Kenyans have been invited to be part of this process,
yes,
give their views. On one hand, it sounds even ironic that on one hand, Parliament is not involved in this process. On the other hand, you're invited to give your opinion. Do you believe that this process of public participation, whatever that is going to be consequential in this, especially in this issue of privatization of state assets?
Thank you so much. But just like she mentioned, I think she is quite clear and direct to the point. In this country, there's a problem with the issue of public participation. It's never taken serious. It doesn't matter how much people are going. In fact, that public participation is also that an avenue to spend something and cough out some cash from the banks and accounts for justification that we did this and we spent this amount of money. So it doesn't matter how much the public is going to participate in this, it will not count. The biggest question we are asking, is it necessary that we have to privatize these stuffs for us to survive? And if it is necessary, who are the buyers? Because, let's be true to ourselves that these things are being privatized, but not Ken Babu is going to buy it. Even if I bid to buy these stuffs, chances of me getting to be the owner, acquiring the ownership are so minimal. The people who are going to buy these stuffs have already been identified. They are known. They just want this thing to pass through Wanjiku and make it public, that formality that it went through public, participation, and people agreed that we sell these stuffs. And then
you agree that the public is being used as a rubber stamp through that?
It has been used as a rubber stamp.
Participation.
It has been used as a rubber stamp for the longest time now. Mm-hmm. We had a finance bill. It came and people really rejected that thing. Personally, I rejected that stuff. Mm-hmm. But where is it today?
Because the question is, Sankara, are we feeling helpless as Kenyan youth that Parliament has ceded ground to the executive? It will not check or oversight this process of privatization. They'll only receive a report to ratify at the tail end of the process. You're being invited for public participation by Treasury, and you know, and you've correctly said, rightfully said, that you know it will be inconsequential. Do you feel helpless at this point that these things will happen and your say or your voice will not be part of this?
Personally, as a patriot, I will not feel helpless, although the state is trying to make me feel helpless. I invoke my powers from Article 1.1 of the Constitution. The sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. The circumstances under which I can express my sovereignty is well elaborated in that particular provision. That said and done, allow me to touch on the IMF question that really drags us to where we are. You know, Fred, for record's sake, allow me say, IMF and World Bank are Western financial schemes that were designed specifically to struggle African economies through unjust, unfair loan interest rates and repayment durations. IMF, the structural readjustment, all the way from the education sector, the public university funding, the privatization of parastatals, all these are IMF-initiated activities. And we know who pays the piper calls the tune. The IMF is in charge of the funds. Now, these are conditions that are set. But again, for history and record's sake, let us reanalyze. Countries and African nations, especially redeveloping or the developing countries that have been in bed with IMF. Someone was telling me that the president of the Republic of Kenya is behaving like the executive director of IMF branch, East African region. You may think that IMF was also elected. I would ask you, who is IMF? How many are they? Who are Kenyans? How many are we? So who should rule who? Where? This is our country. The sovereignty belongs to the people of Kenya, not IMF. They can as well stay with their loans because IMF sets conditions. The moral decay we talk about, these are conditions that are set by IMF. They want us to believe in things that are against our cultural beliefs, but they tell you for you to get the loans and grants, you have to do this. Look at, I was reading some report by the CAFCOD, the Catholic Agency in charge of financial staffs, and also the Global Financial Integrity or Institute, the GFI. In 2012, they were talking of foreign aid remitted to Africa vis-a-vis the financial outflow that leaves Africa to developed countries. In the Least Developed Countries Conference held in Doha in March of this year, the United Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called on the world powers for their unfairness to chip in and support redeveloping countries through energy and financial support. In the agreement, this is an initiative that had begun long time ago. In fact, sustainable goals is just a deviation from what had been set in the 1998s, you see? So the SG was telling these world powers that, you know, you have failed to remit even the 0.02% that translates to around 500 billion USDs that ought to have been remitted to African countries. When you look at the money that these people pick from us in form of financial outflows, illegal transactions, and even the tax havens, actually, for record's sake, you will come to notice that countries that are in the forefront of providing foreign aid to African countries, and especially Kenya, these are countries that act like tax havens. These are the countries that money is siphoned from African countries and stored in their foreign accounts in those countries. So you look at the amount of money that has left the country and the amount of money that comes in. They steal from us through unregulated customs. When it comes to insincere declarations, the gold, the oil reserves, all this culminates to an economic exploitation by the West. So the question, back to your question, the IMF is taking advantage of our financial situation. But again, I've said over and over that it was my wish that we elected a very sober president, one who was very wise to differentiate between working together and working under somebody for the good of the people of Kenya. In as much as it is good to recognize the vital role that the loans may play, it is very important to realize that self-sustainability is the only way forward. If you give fish to a man, you feed him for a day. If you tell a man how to fish, you feed him for the rest of his life. I say that as a laker. We are close to the fish. But again, that is not the concept. The concept is we grow laziness the moment we depend on the give and take it. You see, politicians, we don't have leaders. We have politicians. They are used to handouts. So they are just believing in borrowing, spending. Opulence, the government is living like a Luo man, while the citizens are living like slum dwellers. That is the kind of a scenario we have. The government is driving a Mercedes-Benz, the citizens are boarding matatu. The government has failed to protect its citizens.
That's a youth perspective on this matter,
that
especially
is it.
On the privatization of state assets, especially the KICC, that many Kenyans are sentimental about. That process will continue, but as far as the youth, at least the ones on this panel today, they've all said no. KICC should not be privatized.
Yeah.
Yes?
Never.
Okay. Let's move on to the other big story this week, and that has to do with the National Dialogue Committee report that came out over the weekend. A number of interesting things. Most of the recommendations or proposals that were made by Azimio in as far as cost of living was concerned were not taken into account. Yet the team agreed on quite a number of things that could necessitate Kenyans going for a referendum. Creation of job opportunities or creation of new offices, entrenching some offices in the Constitution, a review of the Constitution 2010 as we know it, and probably we get your view on this, Nelly.
Yeah.
Do you think that that process has been consequential 90 days later, the kind of content that came out of there? Do you feel that that process was necessary or consequential?
I think it was still necessary and both consequential at the same time, because it was necessary. Why? It was necessary because there were some certain issues that we felt as a nation expect to have the issue of cost of living going down. We would expect to know the cost of power going down. But instead, we wanted to hear about the reduction of VAT. How is the committee recommending the government of the day, or how should we as a nation come down from the economic crisis? But instead we had other issues. And this is why, as a member of the Azimio coalition, I feel that there's still need for a referendum for some of these matters, because they've been presented before the committee, which to date has not had the outcome that we expected. And so this is why we are pushing for a referendum. If we are trying to say we want to create the office of the opposition leader and the office to formalize the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, then we feel we need to involve Kenyans. And how do we do this? If this committee has failed, then there's the question of, again, the parliament of the day. We have so long since we had this parliament, we've been failed by it. We've seen it dance to the tune of the executive. And so as a coalition, we feel it is time for a referendum call to some of these issues, because one, again, when you look at the issue of reducing the VAT that we are facing, it was caused by the introduction of the Finance Act, which we were very big on opposing it. But the parliament of the day went ahead and passed it. And so as a coalition, we feel that if this has reached to this point whereby the concerns of the people cannot be taken into account, then we feel then it is ripe for a referendum call.
Yet that is not one of the issues that will be subjected to a referendum. The issue of cost of living, the executive has said that is their own burden. The issues that would push us to a referendum are probably when it comes to change of structure of governance, introduction of the official leader of opposition, office of prime cabinet secretary or prime minister, because the wording of the report was prime minister. And probably other things that may not necessarily have been the main reason why we went into this discussion. Jerry, do you feel that a referendum on those issues, creation of offices, is necessary right now? Issues of cost of living do not necessarily need a referendum.
You know, it's last regime when we used to be invited for interviews, it was really hard to address some of these issues because you used to find a half parliament that was a bit sober and half parliament that is just thereabout. But right now, any time that you invite us for an interview, it gets me thinking. So you want us to go for a referendum because you want to introduce the office of the official opposition leader. Yet, today is first, we have a prime cabinet secretary who is going to receive his salary. We don't even know who gave him that office. But he has been there since the last 14 months. He has been on salary. He has had a whole delegation of teams. He has been flying left, and center using our taxes. So the same method that they introduced, or the same kitchen-made recipe that they used to make sure that that person is in that office for the last 14 months, made sure that that guy has been receiving salary with no fail, allowances. His team in office is the same method that they should use to bring the office of opposition, because it's either they are taking Azimio for a ride or they are decided to just maintain Azimio in some room called NADCO report. Because I can tell you for a fact, we are talking of two offices, but in real sense, we are talking of one office. Because unless the current Honorable Musalia Mudavadi is ready to face EACC and tell Kenyans he has been receiving salary as who in this government, I think his office is already there. So you cannot tell me you want us to go to a referendum to create these two offices. Yet in reality, one office is already functioning for the last 14 months. They have already been receiving salary. They have been, even today in the morning, if you go to this CBD, you will find the office of Musalia Mudavadi. A whole delegation is there working. So it is either Azimio is being taken for a ride, because that is exactly what is happening. Because honestly, if they managed to give this office, these people, this whole team, and remember, this Prime Cabinet Secretary has represented Kenya in so many international forums. He was representing us as a Prime Cabinet Secretary, yet you are telling us to create his office, we go to referendum.
Okay.
So I know what they want to do is play around and start saying, you know, we found empty coffers, we can't manage to go to a referendum, so opposition is going to have to wait. But they already have their guy in office. Okay. So I think Azimio should just maybe look things from Njeri's angle and tell this regime, you know what, your guy is already in office, but he's not officiated. So Azimio opposition leaders should also be in office and not officiated. Then we can go at a balance. The day that they decide we go for a referendum, they can both go, then they can both face EACC, because at the end of the day, it is about accountability.
Babu, the issue of the National Dialogue Committee was formed to address some very, if we may call them, urgent needs that Kenyans needed some form of forum to vent and probably address issues of cost of living, which were very urgent. The issue of a referendum may not really happen this year or next year. In fact, the government, I've never seen a government in its first term entertaining a referendum. It happened with the Kibaki regime, and we saw what happened with that. Meaning that a lot of these discussions we are having may not really come to fruition for a long time. But in as far as the short-term consequences, do you feel satisfied that the reason why we had to constitute the National Dialogue Committee, that it has been of consequence, that there's something Kenyans can say, okay, fine, yeah, at least that has been resolved?
First, let me agree with you that the issue of referendum, we might not have it right now, not even any time close, because anyway, we don't even have the commission of IBC in place. You get that? So there's a lot of things that need to happen before we start talking about the referendum itself. The last time we had a referendum, we spent close to 10 billion shillings. But now, in this case, if we are to have a referendum today, we are going to spend more than that. Why? There's no justification. The NADCO, from my own understanding, ought to have addressed two things. That is the issue of cost of living and electoral malpractice or injustice that comes, which leads up to maybe easy mavita tunakuanga nazo. But looking at what the report that were given out, and even before the report came out, some members who are in that committee had already rejected the report that the citizen had not seen. My party leader, I come from the DAPK, my party leader had communicated even before I received the report that he is not going to pen this signature, neither is he going to take any contribution or payment for that committee, because he feels that justice are not being done to the Mwananchi. But it's true, looking at the report, two things are coming out clear. Number one is the creation of the two positions that my sister has mentioned. And look at how people are talking about it, from the leader of majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, all the way to other MPs. It is coming out clear that these guys sat there to create positions for themselves. And they want to use the Wananchi to authenticate and legitimize these positions. Issue of leader of opposition right now, Raila Odinga can oppose this government without having that office. He's a leader of opposition anyway. Prime Cabinet Secretary, just like she mentioned, she's in office. He's in office. He's been serving. Why do we need to go through a referendum and spend a lot of money? In fact, why did we have to sit and spend taxpayers' money, taking these guys to Bomas, Naivasha, Mombasa, sitting and enjoying themselves, just to choreograph things and come to tell us that now we've sat down for these 21 days and we want to legitimize these positions? My brother, what's coming out clear in this thing is the government, not the government, but the leaders of this country, to some extent, do not take the Wananchi seriously. And it's been a norm that after elections, they sit down and decide, now how are we going to eat?
Mm-hmm. And this is both the government side and...
Both the government side and the opposition side, because if you look at these guys, people who are in the government today and people in the opposition today, they've never shared the government. Mm-hmm. All of them, they've never been the same government. If this team is inside, this team is outside. If this team is outside, this one is inside. That's how that's the matrix. That's the matrix on how they eat. And let me tell you, if you look at the president's Pressman, that book by, is it Lee or somebody? Lee, exactly. He says that President Ruto, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Wetangula, and all that lot, these are people who have studied and choreographed their ways of surviving in the political stage. And they're not going to exit anytime soon. Okay. And that's why I'm telling you, they will not be in the same government. If Team A is outside, Team B must be inside. Okay. Sankara, to ensure that they survive.
Your take on this as we wrap up this session.
Fred, post-election pacts in Kenya, or in African perspective, especially in the Kenya's political dispensation, has been a well-choreographed, ill-thought plan to con and deceive the people of Kenya. This is a scheme widened by the political cousins to ensure that the proletariat, or the people at the bottom of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, remain where they are forever and ever. You cannot convene a boardroom meeting, supply some nice spiced tea with mandazis to lazy politicians to discuss the cost of living. The cost of living is a long chain of events. We have to pay fees, we have to pay for transport, we have to pay for health, we have to pay for a lot of things. So you cannot convene a meeting in Bomas to discuss how to lower the cost of living. In fact, in my own opinion, had these powers had been in my disposal, I would have ordered for immediate arrest and prosecution of all the Bomas NADCO committee members. Immediate refund of all the public money they spent. Imagine a pregnant woman was being swept by floods in Samburu. The deputy president is saying it is us who are taking ourselves to the floods. And then you are there withdrawing salaries to discuss how to lower the cost of living. Are you normal? So we have these powers in my disposal, and we are moving towards that generation. Me, I don't want to steal from the public. I don't want even much money. I only need what to survive on. That is enough for me. We will ensure that whatever is done by this regime, because we are the anchors of tomorrow, they will be accountable. People have continued to withdraw salaries as because in the public events they are still recognized as chief administrative secretaries, despite the court's declaration on the invalidity of those positions. If in any case they are continuing to withdraw salaries, be ready. We will be there for you no matter what. So
we have around a minute and a half, so I'll give each of you about 30 seconds just to give your final parting shot. We'll start with you, Nelly.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think my parting shot would be that it's a rallying call to the youth out there that it is time to take part in the politics of the day. Just like I've always said, whether you're involved directly or indirectly in politics, it affects your life whatsoever. So it's high time that we embraced a new cadre of leadership, a new cadre of youth leaders who are willing to take the country forward, who are willing to bring in a new, not really new, but an alternative kind of leadership that we need in this country. And we will not relent. Okay. We will still keep moving forward in the fight for the youth. Thank you.
Jerry,
mine is just to tell every other leader in this nation who is listening to TV 47 this morning, that whatever you do today, please make sure that if you will leave those offices, you leave with a clean instinct that you serve the people of Kenya to the offices, in those offices that we elected you to serve. You cannot be in those offices receiving salary from Kenyan taxes and not doing the mandate that you are mandated to do. And we need them to know the history of this nation is going to judge you harshly. You continue keeping quiet as the president of this nation takes us to the swamp. When time comes, we are going to judge you harshly. 2027 is going to be coming. We are going to take all of you. Mtaenda nyumbani nyinyi wote.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Babu, next.
Thank you so much. Mine is just to call upon young people to step up and voice out things that are being taken lightly and being sidelined.
Make noise.
Yeah, we need to make some noise. Actually, we need to make some noise and do it courageously, strongly, without fear. Because anyway, you know, in this part of the world, if you talk, you die. If you don't talk, you die. So it's up to you to decide whether you're going to die and leave the information or die with the information. So the young people just have to step up and do something.
Thank you. Finally,
thank you.
Kara.
Fred, allow me to say that the Constitution is not a creative convenience. The rule of law was constitutionally constituted to constitute a constituent of constitutionalism. So people must align themselves to the rule of law. I would say Kenya is in a state of shambles. But again, we must not believe or agree to be driven to the abyss. If the driver loses his sight, the co-driver takes the seat. But remember, the passengers have the say. The sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. The president needs to be reminded every day. If I were innovative enough, I would have designed an alarm that when it rings, it says, the sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. They shall exercise it in a manner that is consistent with that constitution. I end it there. Thank you.
The sovereignty of Kenya belongs to the people. Wonderful parting shot. Thank you so much. Kennedy Sankara, youth policy analyst, advocate, and Operation Linda Jamii. Ken Babu, youth inclusion advocate. Njeri Kahiga, national youth leader, Nyandarua County. And Nelly Chepkemoi, politician and also national youth leader. Our panelists this morning on State of the Nation, even as we look at the youth perspective. Thank you so much for your time and your very well considered opinions on these issues we've discussed today. Allow me to go through the editorial comment this morning. Now, as we mark the World AIDS Day, it is a stark reminder of our collective responsibility to combat the HIV/AIDS epidemic, an ongoing battle that demands our unwavering commitment. In Kenya, while commendable progress has been achieved in reducing new HIV infections, recent statistics reveal a troubling trend that demands urgent attention. The Kenya HIV Estimates Report for 2020 presents a concerning reality. Adolescents and young adults constitute over half of the total new HIV infections. Among the 32,000 or so new HIV infections reported, a staggering 11,200 occurred within the age group of 15 to 24. Shockingly, on a daily basis, 30 young individuals in Kenya find themselves newly infected with HIV, a stark reminder that the battle against this disease is far from over. Experts point to two primary factors contributing to this distressing trend. Firstly, some individuals who acquired HIV during birth have now reached adolescence or young adulthood, but unfortunately failed to adhere to life-saving antiretroviral therapy treatments. Secondly, the vulnerability of underprivileged youth is exacerbated by their first pursuit of financial gains through transactional sex, often involving older partners. This exposes them to higher risks of sexually transmitted infections, STIs, including HIV. As we reflect on World AIDS Day, it is imperative to rally our efforts and resources